had somebody who was a colleague of ours during the coaching period who will go unnamed. And I remember one time we were at lunch and he stopped and he said, "Mark, Thom, I have never met a person who has found so many different ways to say the same two or three things." And I remember I set my fork down and I looked at him and I said, "I'm not sure if that's a compliment or a criticism." And he started laughing. And he said, "It's a compliment."
Yeah. Welcome to Encouraging Leaders, a podcast that exists to remind CEOs and aspiring CEOs that they don't have to lead alone. I'm Mark DeBron, and today we're joined by somebody who has breathed courage into me and to so many other leaders here in St. Louis and around the world. Mark Thom is the CEO and chairman of construction technology leader Mitek, recipient of the St. Louis 40 Under 40 Award and a member of the Policy Advisory Board for Harvard University's Joint Center for Housing. Mark, welcome to the show.
It's good to see you. It's good to be with you.
I'm going to start with one question. When in your leadership journey did you realize that you didn't have to do it alone? Like you couldn't do it all by yourself?
Growing up as a kid, sports was a big part of my life from the time I was really young. And it's hard to be involved in organized sports and not have some basic recognition that what you can do on your own relative to what you can do as a team is very different. Yeah. But professionally, I had a large jump in career responsibility. It was in 2000, so 23 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And while I had 10 years of kind of varying degrees of leadership responsibility, that jump in 2000 was exponential. Mm. It was the largest acquisition that we had done in that part of my life as far as the company I was with. And I just remember being struck with the thought that the scale of this is so much bigger than any leadership responsibility you've had, no matter what people think about what you've done up till now, your energy level, whether they think that you're able to learn and influence people. There was just a sense that there's got to be another jump in the way that you think about teams, forming teams, and working through people en masse. And I just remember that was a really seminal point in my leadership journey. And I had to sit back and start to adopt some different principles about how I would lead as a result of that.
I had the privilege of working with you as a coach for almost 8 years. And I remember sharing with many people since that time and during that time that I couldn't ever catch you. Every coach that I had before, I would catch up to the coach in whatever the skill was. And I was watching and I'm like, I can't catch this guy. And I finally realized that you weren't stopped. You were moving and you were growing. Mm. And I think about how beautiful that witness is of that you're not done or finished, and so that people like me who can learn from you, that the people, the CEOs that are listening to this, they can't be done. They can't just be in teaching mode. Otherwise, people catch them. But you kept on learning and growing. What has driven that continuous process of learning for you? Why do you do it? What is behind that for you?
Yeah, it's an awesome question, Mark. It's such a good question. And I think that there's a curiosity that's, to me, is really an essential ingredient in leaders that over their lifetime, whatever that looks like, whatever span and whatever form that takes, they recognize that there's a lot to continue to learn and that the curiosity is a big part of us asking questions and wanting to know people. And, I think even deeper than that, curiosity comes from a lot of times I think it's about our worldview. I'm someone who believes really deeply that every person has a story. And if you really believe that, then you will constantly be trying to mine the depths of that with people. And when you do that, it's enriching because you learn things about people, you learn the way they think, And yes, you also learn what they think about whatever the work is that you're given to do.
Right.
But I think that if you don't have a curious mind, and if somehow you get to a place in your life where, you feel like you've really got everything figured out, then, you probably need to go somewhere else and disrupt yourself. And that for me has been another principle is I've had really multiple good opportunities beyond any experience I had to say yes to go and do something that ended up being really stretching.
NASA did a study where they were looking for creative genius. They were looking for engineers in the future, and they did a longitudinal study. And at age 5, 98% of the people tested at the genius level for creativity. So they're basically coming out with all kinds of things at age 5. By age 10, it goes down to 30%. Same people.
Wow.
By
Okay.
age 15, down to 12%. And as adults, when they test creative genius, which is what you're talking about creative disruption, like keep on going, keep on learning, keep on stretching, keep on curiously learning. It's down to 2%.
That's a fascinating study, by the way. I'd love to read that.
Well, here's the connective tissue, because you shared it back with me. I'm sharing it back with you. So you said every single human has a story inside of them. And so you're listening for that story. And I have never seen a person better than you. I've traveled the world, and I haven't seen anybody better at drawing out the story in another human being. You act like they have it in them, and you're unlocking it by letting them share it and asking really, really beautiful, thoughtful questions out of care and deep love for them. So I can see that in your leadership, and you're doing it. Here's the thing I think you get paid to do as a leader, and I think you do it better than most, if not all. And that is, how do you do that at scale? How do you get 6,000 Mitek? How do you get their stories back up to the surface because they've been pushed down?
I had somebody who was a colleague of ours during the coaching period, and who will go unnamed. And I remember one time we were at lunch, and he stopped and he said, Thom, I have never met a person who has found so many different ways to say the same 2 or 3 things. I remember I set my fork down, and I looked at him and I said, I'm not sure if that's a compliment or a criticism. And he started laughing. And he said, it's a compliment.
Yeah.
Okay, the reason I tell that story on myself, which I'm still not sure whether it is a compliment or a criticism,
it's a compliment.
But I think in a large company, particularly at scale, so much of the responsibility as a senior leader is you have to have a story. There has to be a narrative that first is continuous for people. And when you have such a diverse group of people like we have at a place like Mitek, or even that we would have had at Tyco Healthcare at even much bigger scale, we have about 6,500 people here around the world, but they're spread all over Vietnam and South Africa and 8 or 9 countries in Europe and Australia and New Zealand, the US. You have a lot of dynamics going on there. So I think the way that you begin to connect with people, which then starts the process of drawing people out, is you have to have a story as a senior most leader. If you don't love stories in other people, it's going to be very tough to be a great storyteller, I think. And rhythms are the way that we do that in a cadence where it can begin to saturate. And then we use other rhythms down through the organization to help our leaders to tell the story of the business in different ways, share the story of the business, have their people learn to do it.
Yeah, rhythms give you the space and time and frequency and consistency of being able to share and listen to stories and get better and better as a leader relating to the overall picture and all of the people. Without a rhythm, you are a one-off. It's just a one-off thing, and they can't ever gain a full understanding.
Mark, real quick, in sports, right? The analogy they use is that person, if they could just get some more touches, like in basketball or in football, if they could get on the field more. And it's the same thing for us as leaders. I mean, we have to give ourselves enough touches through the different layers of the organization. We have to be creative about the mediums we use, like standing up in front of 2,000 people. once a month doesn't really happen in that many companies anymore.
No, it doesn't.
Like it did back in a prior life for me. But it's better because the ability to reach 6,000 or 8,000 or 10,000 or 12,000 and do it the way that people consume, to me, is one of the highlights that we have at our disposal as leaders. But we have to take advantage of that. And we have to be really good at not wasting those mediums by being really poor storytellers or not being able to connect with people. Yeah.
I remember I was trying to get better at tennis. I asked the tennis coach, I said, listen, what should I do to get better at this? She said, how often you play? And I said, probably once every 3 months or so. And she said, play more, I mean, it's a little laughable, I play golf 4 times a year. Are you expecting to be good at it? Really? And if you're sharing a story once, 3 times a year at this banquet, is that really the pattern that's going to get you good? It really is that simple. If you want to get good at any leadership habit, any leadership skill, just practice it. And then how do we get every single leader inside of our organization at every single level practicing those skills so that they become better before they become CEO, instead of have to be CEO and then try to figure out how to tell stories?
Yeah, I think rhythms are, Mark, rhythms are just like a means to an end. Rhythms are a discipline and they're a vehicle. They're like a construct to repetitively, in the right areas, bring the right people together to have the right type of conversation. Yeah. Now, there's a lot in there, what I just said.
There's a lot in there.
But rhythms are a discipline that give us the opportunity to tell stories and share stories. Sometimes, when you're like, Mark, how at scale do you draw out of people anything? And my answer is, you start with storytelling.
I got to visit one of your plants at Mitek in Dallas, and it was incredible leadership team there, and they were practicing storytelling, so they were working on it. That you had shared enough to know that they knew that it was important.
This came up I was at like a board retreat yesterday, and we were having. You would have loved it. I would have loved it.
Yeah,
some really deep sharing, like the personal professional check-in process, but that you first kind of shared with me and have brought that into your own leadership as a way to get people to break down some of the barriers that maybe they have in their mind or exist in their leadership about all things, not just being about being able to share and be vulnerable, and how that's so essential to creating trust to then go and do whatever the work is that you need to get done and be a steward of as well. Because as leaders, we're going to quickly outstrip any direct subject matter experience we have. So the leadership quality is about something other than a level of detail about maybe that particular business. But we're still being entrusted to shepherd the organization, to steward people. And so we have to draw on a different type of reservoir. And that reservoir is about knowing people really, really well and developing trust with people and being able to galvanize people around ideas so that they then can move and execute. And I just think that a lot of that is the really fun part of leadership.
I don't get to share this. I do share it often outside. You and I were sitting together in a coaching session when I was getting ready to make that step. And we had been together for an hour and talked through some of the details. And then we were walking out. We were at Caldy's. And I don't know if you remember, but you said, hey, Mark, I can tell you're a little bit concerned or scared of this next step. You said, I have been where you are, and I've been where you're going, and you are ready for this step. You're going to have to do the work step by step. You're going to have to take the steps. But you can put your hand right on my shoulder. And if you stumble or fall, I'll pick you back up and keep on going. I'm just so grateful for you being there for me whenever I had to make that change. But when you think about the first time you had to make that change, so you had to go from a functional leader to, not the regional manager role, because you had to be a functional leader there. When you had to step up to full P&L responsibility, you had to have people that were much better than you, than their functions than you. If you could go back to that young Mark Thom and share one piece of advice to him, what would you tell him to do?
I'm thinking exactly of like when that time was that you just described, was early 99. I stepped into a divisional president role at the then Tyco Healthcare as obviously a really young guy. So it was about $350 million. It was not insignificant. And Alan Todris was leading the human resources function at that time, who I just have such a fond memory of. He was someone who was very, very safe to talk about the thing that you and I are talking about right now, which is the natural reticence or anxiety at times of stepping out into an area that you recognize, you're going to have to rely on people more than you ever have. And you're also going to have to continue to grow and develop and have courage and exercise that in different ways. And, I think tapping into that, like that, for any leader who makes that first step, you would be well served to have somebody also who is really safe, and they care about you for who you are. They know what you're stepping into, so they have some repository of experience to draw from to come alongside you, but they're there primarily to just be kind of a good guide, a sounding board, someone to listen, and a lot of times someone who, all you really need from them is you just need encouragement. You don't really need answers. You just need to know that someone is listening to you who cares about you. They have empathy and they believe in you. Such a big deal.
Such a big
To
deal.
have people that believe in us. Such a big deal. Way, way beyond many times the level of belief that we have in ourselves. I just think it's such an important ingredient for a leader to have that safety net around them. And even as their experience grows, to continue to do that.
I call that an encouraging leader, because, you can call it a coach, mentor, whatever words you want to use. But as an adult, I've accepted responsibility now that I'm the one that has to find that person. There's nobody coming, there's no parent assigning, there's no sport team that's making it happen. And if I want that for every single leader at every single level. So really, really love the share there, the advice. And I hope that our listeners will follow it. If you're a young president looking to build profit or purpose into your business, to accelerate the growth of your business, would love to spend 15 minutes with you. There's a Calendly link at encouragingleaders.com. And I'd love to hear what's on your mind and see how we might encourage you. Other than that, thanks so much for listening. And Mark, Thom, thank you so much for pouring in your full heart here and encouraging me and so many leaders around Mitek and around the community and around the world. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mark. It's been my great pleasure.